Okay, it's 10:30. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for sticking on for this part of the discussion. I'd like to just start by saying this portion of our meeting today is really a discussion. So I'd like to invite those of you who wish to turn your cameras on and feel free to mute and unmute yourselves to speak at any point through the chat this morning. To begin with, I'd kind of like to do a round of introductions. Given that we have a large audience here, about 30 of us, I think we'll have to keep this brief, maybe 30 seconds or so to introduce yourself. But if everybody would like to go around and introduce your name, organization, title, and maybe just a quick statement to the effect of how SmartShift Coalition can provide a value to your organization going forward, how you see this organization helping to solve some of the challenges or addressing opportunities you all have, or maybe a certain opportunity or challenge that is particularly relevant and timely to you all. We'll start, I guess, at the top left of the gallery view. I'm seeing Andy Trell first. So would you like to start, Andy?
Hey Travis, hi everybody. So Andy Terrell. So I'm working on the innovation strategy for Ocean Infinity. So hopefully a lot of my US counterparts are either familiar to you or will be familiar to you. I mean, in terms of the Smart Ships Coalition, I think there's a great environment, kind of physical environment, and an industry regulator, authority, academics. The environment for cross-party collaboration to really start shifting the needle on, kind of maritime autonomy and how we operate them. So I'm really looking forward to trying to understand what the projects are, how they all interact, how the projects are aligned, and how we can kind of start tackling each of those chunks. I mean, certainly from our perspective, that regulatory landscape is the bit that is going to kind of slow up the implementation, or certainly in the UK, there's a risk of it slowing up at the moment. So how can this kind of cross-party working group help break that down? And also how can we, with our technology and with Michigan Tech, how can those technologies be implemented in some of the projects that you have all got either going on at the moment or are being conceived at the moment as well?
Great, thank you, Andy. Chris?
Chris Burns with Mackinac County Economic Development. You heard from me earlier. We've got a lot of great projects. And the thing I want to emphasize here is that there is unprecedented amounts of funding available to fund actual implementation, to build stuff. The problem is that you have to have an actual plan in place and the engineering costs and so forth in order to do that. And so the money's getting spent on great marine development all over the place, except in the Great Lakes, because none of the groundwork's been laid far enough along to be able to identify and quantify those projects and go get. So we need to speed up that little bit of process right now. And so that's why I'm particularly interested, Travis, in being able to connect with the crew you've got here in this group, because they're the people who can get stuff done. And so just like the grant we got from Eagle recently, it's because Mackinac Marine Services hired Incat Crowther, got the engineering done, and we were able to submit a good project for that. Everything else is, until we get that engineering and those good cost estimates is over, I can't get the agency, state or federal, to fund anything, right? And so that's really the key thing. And so we got to speed up that little process right now, because the 1.7 trillion in funding that's available is going to get spent somewhere, and it isn't going to be in the Great Lakes unless we get our act together real quick on some of these actual projects and get them initiated. So really appreciate bringing us all together, Travis.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. How about Chris Latta?
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Latta. I am the Vice President here at Binsfeld Engineering. We are a vessel performance monitoring company that provides solutions for the IMO shaft power limitation. Really, for us, what our goal during this group has been is to be able to have a more established research station to develop new product to meet those green goals. And the big challenge that we've got right now is that there's a lack of regulatory here in the Great Lakes and not a whole lot of knowledge of how to build that regulatory out to help the Great Lakes. Because as many of you know, our maritime operations are very unique, shorter transit times, more maneuvering, and the IMO green goals are great, but they do not address the issues that we have here in the Great Lakes. So we're looking to help this group identify the efficiency gains we can make through autonomy, and then also be a part of that change.
Great, thank you, Chris. Sam Miller.
Yeah, I'm the from the EPA in Duluth, Minnesota, the captain of the Lake Explorer 2, and we have a couple underwater gliders for the EUV stuff, and we're kind of curious about that, just what Chris has talked about, and I thought this group was a pretty good unit to get into to figure all this stuff out. So thank you.
Great, thank you for being here. Howard.
Hi, everyone. So I already introduced myself, research engineer working on the innovation related to autonomous ships at Transport Canada's R&D Center. So I see the Smart Ships Coalition as a fantastic venue of getting Canada and the US to work together towards having autonomous ships operating on the Great Lakes, whether it's a ferry, a cargo ship, or whatever. President Biden was in Canada last week, and the strengths between Canada and the US working together are there. Your latest Artemis 2 going to the moon will be having a Canadian astronaut, which is fantastic. I really am proud of that. So all I can see are benefits. I hate reinventing the wheel. So all I can see is benefits with Canada working together with the US on autonomous ships. And I'll leave it at there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. Hayden.
Hi, folks. I'm Hayden Henderson, a research engineer here at the GLRC. Sort of got the sun in the background, but happy to jump on board. Pretty much from a science practitioner angle. But glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Hayden. Hi, Randall.
Hey, how are you, Travis?
Great.
Sorry, I'm a bit late. The cat wanted to eat. I live in Toronto. I'm a Canadian, but I've done work all over the world. And the organization I'm most closely associated with is a company from Norway called Light Structures. Light Structures provides sensors that are placed inside the hulls of ships to monitor stress, and they sell to the civilian population as well as military and Coast Guard. Presently, they have technology on a large U.S. Navy surface autonomous vessel, and this company sells all over the world. One of the projects we're going to be supporting is led out of Memorial University, Newfoundland, in partnership with the Inuit community of Northern Canada. They are pulling together a $93 million project with inviting people from the United States, Canada, and all of the Arctic Circle countries and governments to participate, with the goal to develop the ideal vessels for the Arctic. So, you know, I certainly see all of that topic, whether it's for an autonomous vessel or a vessel led by a human, to be very appropriate for this audience, because some of those will be autonomous. In our case in Canada, because we're selling products to the Navy and the Coast Guard, we have to spend up to $50 million in economic benefits to Canada because of an offset program. And so we're involved with a lot of people regarding innovation and research, and a number of Canadian institutions are getting into autonomous technologies. I'm also involved with autonomous technologies in the air and on the ground, in addition to marine areas. And I just thought I'd tell you that Ontario has just established a new marine association called the Ontario Marine Council, and they're interested in this topic. And we have a number of provincial, national, and regional marine groups in Canada. So there's a lot going on, both with light structures and with other topics of interest. So happy to meet you all and love to collaborate with my friends from all over the world.
Thank you, Randall. Yeah, those are some great updates. Fraser.
Hi, Travis. I'm trying to get my camera turned on. In the meantime, I'll speak. Yeah, thanks. Great workshop this morning. It's great to hear from Ornolf and the others. So I'm with the National Research Council of Canada, for others who haven't seen me before. Howard showed some photos of our facilities and some of the vessels we're using to do some autonomous research. We're very interested in general in autonomous vessels operating in harsh environments and ice. I think ice is going to be a challenge in Canada, along the St. Lawrence and maybe into the Arctic ultimately. And we're also, advocating for a more unified approach to autonomous R&D in Canada. And that would make us a better partner, I think, to work with the folks at Smart Ship Coalition in Mars, and the idea of having test facilities similar to yours across Canada would be something we've been focusing on. That's not to compete with Mars, but to complement it, I think. So we're pushing hard, and I know some folks are on from Mon Marine Institute. I won't speak for them, but we're working to collaborate with them, and there are others across Canada who are developing their facilities. Anyway, thanks. I'll stay quiet. I'm interested in hearing what you're doing, and stay in touch, right?
Yeah, thank you, Fraser. And I had a great chat with your folks at Marine Institute the other day. It's incredibly impressive, the point where they're starting out. So very excited to do some collaborations around R&D topics and policy and otherwise. And we're also awaiting our ice-infested waters to clear up here. So.
Well, we talk a lot about ice. We don't always get it here in this part of Newfoundland. It comes down the coast. This year we did see it, but you can't rely on it for R&D planning, right? So yeah, we'll need a place where there's always ice or that you can plan on doing that kind of work in the field. Yeah,
Certainly.
So again, keep up the good fight.
Thank you. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning. Yes, I am Jeff Ratcliffe, the Executive Director for the Keweenaw Economic Development Alliance. Chris is my counterpart over on the eastern end. We serve the Houghton and Keweenaw counties. My interest in this, unlike Chris, I'm not involved directly with any maritime projects, but I am here to support Travis and the Great Lakes Research Center and bring the resources we have in our area, including our MTech Smart Zone, to the table as needed as technologies and small companies, technology-based companies, and hopefully emerge out of this in our area, as that is my job is to look after. I'm very interested in, obviously, the long haul as autonomous technology is being implemented in the world, as it will change the nature of our economies, and even at the local level, we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Morning, Rebecca.
My name is Rebecca DeGrazia. I'm with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. I'm with the sustainability section. I'm actually here in place of the section director, Julie Staglin. She's at a conference right now, but we do a lot of partnerships with Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, Office of Great Lakes, which is also on today, different projects that we've been working on, lots of sustainability, design, clean energy, and a marine EV network. So a lot of programs with that, opportunities there. A lot of funding coming out of, you've heard earlier, funding coming out of our Volkswagen settlement, charge up program, and the fuel transformation program. So taking diesel to something cleaner. Yeah, lots of other projects that are out there. I'm sure the Office of Great Lakes will be touching on some of those as well. But Sorry for the barking dogs. I can be a contact as well as Julie. I'll drop our information in the chat so you can reach out for us on those opportunities.
Great, thank you. Hi, Mike. Glad to see you're able to make it.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great, fantastic. So my name is Mike Sullivan. I'm the director of the Great Lakes Gateway with the Maritime Administration. We try to work with maritime transportation system stakeholders on all the US DOT and other federal agency funding opportunities that are out there. So there are a lot of them right now with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So if anyone's interested in learning more about any of the myriad of different funding opportunities out there, please do reach out to me and I can provide you with more information or try to connect you with the correct program for the project that you're trying to undertake. So nice to meet everyone, and I will looking forward to learning more about the group and everyone that's involved. So thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And I'm sure you're going to hear from some folks based on your offer there. So, hi, Wes. Wes Dukes on the line. We'll skip Wes, but if you come back, certainly feel free to chime in. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, Travis and everybody. Just a note for those who are not in the lower peninsula of Michigan, we're getting a lot of weather, so some of us may drop off with power going out and things like that. I'm a Great Lakes Policy Specialist with the Office of the Great Lakes, Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. A grant of ours helped start the Smart Ships Coalition a few years ago, and we're very happy to see where it's going and hoping to continue collaborating to make Michigan a regional and an international leader in maritime tech. And I'm very excited to see what was discussed earlier today and see where things are going.
Thanks, Simon. And we really appreciate all of your guys' support to get this going. So, and it's certainly growing. Morning, Travis. There, Travis Moon.
Yeah, this is Travis Moon. I'm an electrical engineer with Fincantieri Marinette Marine. So it's my first time listening on one of these, and it's very informative. And I look forward to hearing what the rest of the group has to discuss and getting a little more involved.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. And I think it's really great to see a little bit more industry participation. That's been one of our goals, and sort of a conclusion from our fall workshop was that we really need to do more outreach to organizations like Fincantieri. And I know you folks were up here for our fall workshop, so thank you for that. Hopefully we can continue to grow that side. Good morning, Gabrielle. Gabrielle and Brandy. All right, we'll skip and come back to you if you're on. Hans, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Sorry. So thanks, Travis. Hans Van Summer. I'm with the Great Lakes Water Studies Institute at Northwestern Michigan College. I've been working with Travis and the team at Michigan Tech for a number of years on workforce development opportunities. As he had mentioned earlier, looking forward to continuing that conversation, as well as helping host the fall conference as attached with Lakebed this fall. So we're really excited. We're seeing more and more opportunity for the need for the personnel to support this industry and the development of the tools. And as we feel the coordination of the development of the tool and the development of the workforce simultaneously really expedites the opportunity for the industry to benefit from these new innovative approaches. So looking forward to participating, and thanks for giving me the time.
Thank you, Hans. Yeah, we're glad you're here. Morning, Sebastian.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I think it's earlier there than it is here.
Yeah, that was a 6 a.m. start for us. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you for making it.
I'm Sebastian Berg, the head of the R&D department at Shift Environmental Technologies. So we create and build a couple of autonomous surface vessels, primarily for spill response at this time. We're also moving into inspection, repair, and maintenance, as well as some ISR operations with them. The Smart Ships Coalition, really interested to hear all of the regulatory stuff, especially some of the international stuff. It's hard for me to keep track of all these regulations moving so quickly in all different parts of the world. So great to see some of the people from Transport Canada here, as well as some of the international partners. And as Howard mentioned there, also on the industry side, we're not wanting to reinvent the wheel over here. So it's good to kind of see what projects are happening, and would rather be partnering with people than competing with them. So good to keep kind of updated and everything that's going on, and nice to get to know some of you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. We're really glad to have you, another participant from industry. So I hope we continue to grow that side. Good morning, Anthony.
Morning, everyone. So Anthony Beaupré-Jacques, I'm a project officer at Transport Canada Innovation Center, working as part of Howard's team, who presented earlier, and I'm glad to be part of the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Hi, Emily.
Good morning, everybody. Emily Finnell, Great Lakes Senior Advisor and Strategist, and I lead the Michigan Office of the Great Lakes. Thank you all for being here today, and great workshop so far, Travis. Looking forward to our discussions here with this group to form the steering committee. As Simon mentioned, we've been a longtime supporter and sponsor of the Smart Ships Coalition, and as a funder and a partner, hope to continue to play a key role in helping to advocate for sustainable maritime across our ports and harbors across the state and the region. Really hoping, I see an opportunity for us moving forward with this work to really leverage the expertise and innovation spirit and the relationships and knowledge, across this group, as well as others who were not able to be with us today, and help us crystallize into, potentially a top 3-4 priorities for the Smart Ships Coalition to really work together on to really advance the region as a leader in this space. So looking forward to listening to the conversation that we're going to be having after introductions, and hoping that we can form a really strong steering committee that has diverse perspectives. So I'm glad to see industry here today. We missed some of your presence at our in-person workshop last fall, but really hoping to build some strong relationships with you in this work going forward. So thanks everyone for being here, and looking forward to hearing all your thoughts and ideas.
Thanks much, Emily. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, Travis and everyone. I'm Alicia Wolf, and I am a freight policy specialist with the Michigan Department of Transportation. And I am here to listen and learn from these great presentations and discussions, and hopefully learn some ways that the state can help be of support, and what roles we can play in these great initiatives. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Hey, good morning, James.
Yeah, hello, Travis. It's been a long time since the beginning of COVID since we last talked.
Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm the other half of Sebastian. I'm CEO of Shift Environmental Technologies. Yeah, really excited to be back on here. We're going to be doing a project, looks like in the Great Lakes, to be determined with the Canadian Coast Guard. So, yeah, happy to be back in the ecosystem, and looking forward to seeing humans again. So we'll finally make it out there, I think, Travis.
Awesome. Oh, I can't wait. Yeah. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Morning, Richard. Richard Kelly on the line. All right, we'll skip and come back to you if you join us. Hey, Eric.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Coker. I'm a research engineer at Michigan Tech's GLRC, along with Travis and Hayden. So I have a background in mechanical engineering and mechatronics engineering, and using that to solve maritime issues. And yeah, excited to be working in autonomy.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, Eric, I would call right-hand man here. So he's certainly been super instrumental in helping with the Smart Ships, as well as Hayden, and kind of coordinating these working group meetings. So if you guys were here this fall, you'll remember Eric and Hayden were kind of leading those discussions around technology and policy. So thank you guys for continuing to provide that support. Jason Radcliffe, how are you?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Jason Radcliffe here. I am your Coast Guard representative for the Great Lakes. I work at District 9 in Cleveland. and anything dealing with regulatory work or development or waterways issues, I am your person. So you can always get a hold of me through Travis. You need my contact information.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for being here this morning, Jason. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody taking time for introductions. And I think that is really an important way that we kind of kick off the steering group. So just to kind of reiterate the intentions or the goals of this steering group is really to have a group of engaged stakeholders from Smart Ships Coalition that are interested in helping to share your input to help set the priorities and the agenda for this the Smart Ships Coalition. So I'm going to share my screen, and I put together sort of just a list of ideas and discussion points. And I really do hope that, the next half hour or so is a discussion, and I'm soliciting feedback from all of you to really try to set us up for, a sustainable future with this group. And part of that may be some arm twisting. I may ask for some volunteers to help lead some of these initiatives. So, if you're not the right person, feel free to nominate somebody. So with that, I'd kind of like to run through just a few key takeaways from the workshop this fall, things that really stood out to me when I went through and reviewed all the notes from the different working groups, and things that I believe are in line with what the broader group of stakeholders of Smart Ships has interest in. So I'm going to rattle through these, and then I'm just going to ask all of you to, feel free to chime in on Zoom to address some of these if you see these as priorities. So first off, we'll just start with the easiest one. Is we are planning for a fall workshop. So our format for Smart Ships has been hosting at least an annual or twice a year workshop, convening virtually and in person. So as you heard, we'll be planning a workshop in September, the 21st and 2nd in Traverse City, Michigan. And, I'd like to put it out there that we're certainly looking for help and input in organizing speakers, topics that we should see on the agenda. The format of that is going to be a day and a half, so we can organize panel discussions. We can have more of these working group discussions, as well as it is adjacent and on the water at Northwestern Michigan College's waterfront facility, where we can actually get some vehicles or technologies in the water there. So I think there's a great opportunity for exhibits and industry participation as well. Then lastly, I'll just address the need for sponsorship, as there will be, cost associated with setting up this event, organizing the event, and hosting it. We do have a nominal participation fee this year, and a registration link that I'll send out to the full group soon. But we are also looking for industry sponsors or others to step up and take a role in sustaining this group moving forward. Another topic that I think is in line with our one of the takeaways from the workshop was information exchange and providing, Smart Ships Coalition functioning as a network for sharing information between the types of stakeholders that we represent. And in line with that, I think we could do more to organize the periodic webinars and information sharing events. That could be something as simple as a 1 hour lunch and learn. And I think that would fall well within our abilities and our interests. So if your organization has topics or information they would like to share and present, feel free to reach out. We can work to organize more informal webinars around that. Another point here that I think I've touched on is sort of the sponsorship and fundraising to sustain sort of this administrative activity for the Smart Ships group. There could be opportunities at this point in time. We're a no cost for membership organization, but there could be different opportunities to look at a membership structure, understanding that not everybody will be able to contribute the same, but I'm seeking input on that. It's a topic we discussed at our fall workshop, and it really gets at, if this organization is adding value to your organizations, how can we all figure out a way to make this sustainable going forward. And now the next few topics I'm going to jump into are really more specific outcomes from the various working groups. So on the technology working group, we discussed a need to coordinate these technology projects, these research initiatives. And, as a partner of that, Michigan Tech is very excited to be involved in this with the Mars test bed here. there's different models that we sort of talked about in terms of how research could be coordinated with a group like Smart Ships Coalition. For example, there could be the ability to pool resources to answer some of these, as we heard, Ornoff put it, pre-competitive challenges. I think that's a great word. You know, really looking at the pre-competitive barriers to enabling mass and smart shipping technologies to advance all of our organizational interest looking forward. There may also be other funding opportunities, which we heard, you know, touched on throughout. You know, Mariad mentioned a couple of these. So looking at these opportunities that we could pool our time and resources toward to find funding for. And just to give an example, one of the topics we talked about at the fall workshop was the need to test even things like sensor packages. And I'm going to relate this to a specific example with COLREGS 5. Captain Cost addressed, you know, this in his presentation, that, you know, vessels need to be manned essentially, or capable of maintaining a proper lookout by sight and hearing. So as we think about remotely operated autonomous ships, you know, that's going to be a function that somehow has to be maintained by technology. So I think there's a huge opportunity to do projects that would look at, you know, what sensors are we able to deploy to effectively meet this requirement? And by, you know, collecting that data, creating the demonstrations or the pilots, as we heard earlier, you know, we can share and provide that information up to the regulatory folks who are very involved and active with this group, and looking to us to share that type of information with them as they form their policy and regulation pieces. Moving down the list, I think outreach and engagement was a topic we heard throughout the various working groups, particularly reaching a broader audience and different types of stakeholders. One of the stakeholders that you know, I already alluded to that we'd like to see more active participation from is industry. But another part of industry is the maritime workforce, the labor interest, the actual mariners and ship operators. We do have folks representing those different interests in Smart Ships Coalition. However, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to do a more coordinated outreach to involve them, in particular trying to engage the maritime workforce, and you know, in ways that it shares the information of what we see is coming, and also sort of dismisses some of the fears or concerns that could be barriers for you know, the maritime industry. You know, for example, ship operators, or the ship masters rather, concerns of you know, job displacement, which I think we all kind of concluded, or you know, recognize, at least in our discussions at the fall workshop, you know, is not the goal of this technology advancement. It's really to make the maritime workplace safer and more efficient, and to augment the maritime workforce and their capabilities to operate the ships and meet the demands of industry. So certainly an opportunity there. We've heard a lot on the economic and business development side of things, all the opportunities that exist. So, you know, is there ways that we can use this group to be more strategic in going after these very large funding opportunities by facilitating collaborations and teams that encompass all of our constituencies, from government to academic to industry folks. Certainly a tremendous opportunity to form some, you know, very competitive teaming through this group and the organizations in it. As you saw today, you know, we're doing our best to coordinate with the international smart shipping and mass initiatives by including them in these meetings and discussions and hearing the information that they are presenting. There's certainly an opportunity for us to focus more on this sort of international council, where smart ships would be a seat at that discussion, as would Canada, as would Norway, for instance. So is there a way that we can help to coordinate this type of activity in a more structured and consistent way? Workforce development, again, is sort of one of the pillars of our working groups. We sort of discussed the fall workshop, you know, the need for developing competency trees and new credentials that will equip the future workforce for these jobs that are maybe not in existence today but coming. There's also, the opportunity for us to create these advisory groups to help with the development of future certifications. We also talked about things like facilitating smart ships job boards and career fairs to bring together, employers and potential employees. So again, seeking input on how we try to, find an activity where we have the most common interest here to move this ball forward. And then lastly, we've talked a lot about cybersecurity, and that's a theme we continue to hear about across all of the working groups. In particular, the technology and policy groups, cybersecurity, and the rapid change of that is something that everybody seems to have an interest in. So is there an initiative or a specific project that we might kick off or champion as a coalition to really to help address this? So I'm just going to stop there, and I'd like to offer up to everybody on the line here to maybe share some input or ideas or other ideas for priorities for smart ships.
Well, Travis, I would be happy to jump in here. First of all, I'm really glad you mentioned organizationally, as far as funding for the organization and so forth. As I mentioned, there is unprecedented grant funding available right now, and I sincerely believe if we had the right plan together, I could help identify and acquire funding for this programming. But one of the, and I would love to do that, and we can talk afterwards about how to go about that. But one of the important things that I wanted to be able to mention is classification of when we say a smart ship. Is there identification of classifications of the boat of what we're actually talking about? Because the little wooden runabouts that are made at the Great Lakes Boat Building School got giant federal grants to train people how to do that, but they're literally building wooden runabouts like you and I would drive around on the weekend. It has nothing to do with commercial business development and so forth. And it got a big grant from the federal EDA to build that boat. Well, we want to leverage that, right? And be able to do the sorts of training that you're talking about. But what we're talking about are actually ships, right? We're not, and the ports are different. How we would charge these if we do electrify them is very different. The batteries that would be needed is very different, right? And so you got recreational boating, which is great and wonderful. And we built a lot of those boats in Michigan and so on and so forth, right? But then you get into this classification, the 50 to 200 ton, baking to the working class boats, right? That's what the Coast Guard's driving around. That's the 138 ships. It's all the ferry boats and so forth, right? And then there's freighters, right? And international shipping and so forth. And that's a whole different set. And so I believe, Travis, in order to advance this, it would be very helpful to break down into those categories, because the different folks involved here are involved or interested in those different sectors. And we can actually make some progress if we get a little better definition of what we're talking about. What's the classification of those projects? What's the investment and job creation potential out of that? What's the impact and so forth? So that's my big suggestion, Travis, because we're focused very specifically on that mid-size, I guess, working class ships. I don't know what you guys in the marine industry would call those, right? But then the Great Lakes governors and premiers, right? They're looking at freighter ports, right? And so there's nothing even in the Straits of Mackinac on their list, on their to-do list, because we got a couple mining ports, right? We're pile rocks into the ships, and we want those to work well as well. So that classification, what the types of ships, what the ports, what they need and so forth, I think would be very important to break down into those classifications. And then we can get a little busier about what are we specifically trying to do. And then I can be more successful in actually funding the projects. And it's not just this broad, hey, we want to do better with boating. So that's my 2 cents worth, Travis.
No, this is great, Chris. Thank you so much. I've added a couple of notes here to the list, and I think you hit the nail on the head of, we should define what smart ships are to this group. And, that might be very broad, but it would be good to get more input from everybody on that, and where our focus really is. And then also, hearing you talking about the infrastructure and sort of that modernization of the ports and shore infrastructure to make this happen. So very good points, and thank you for adding those. Randall, I saw you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I have 2 comments. One is I'm finding the definition to be very challenging because we're running into companies who make unmanned vehicles that fly, that now dive into the water and sail underwater. And we've run into people who have ground-based autonomous vessels that sail. So the definition is challenging. The recreational business in the United States is phenomenal and growing like crazy. And I know I love the water ski, but I've always had trouble finding people to drive the boat. I wish I'd had an autonomous speed craft that I could ski behind. So this definition is interesting. One of the things that struck me as well is a number of our American and Canadian friends are developing solutions that U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Navy are testing, as well as other NATO forces. And so I'd like to suggest that we look at this holistically, because if we're able to serve both audiences, our businesses can make profits. And in many cases, they would be using very similar base technologies instead of limiting this discussion to a civilian marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. I think that's a really terrific point on engaging with our defense industries, and certainly a lot of technology starts there, right? And so it would be prudent for us to try to incorporate more of them in our discussion. So any connections you have or may wish to share, or I'm out this to everybody, please do feel free to engage with the folks in your networks to invite them to be a part of this discussion in the future.
And I can help you with U.S. contacts too.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. All right, any more comments?
Hey, Travis. This is Chris.
Hey, Andy.
Wanted to jump in and just say that I think one of the things that we found really successful with the Society of Naval Architects Marine Engineers is we reach out to the maritime colleges and the maritime research centers, and we get a list of projects coming up in the next year or two that then we can submit to our commercial partners to submit proposals to support those projects. Is that something that the Great Lakes Research Center could do as well?
I think that would be something we're capable of helping. That's typically the Great Lakes Research Center. That is how our business operates. Is we're a soft funded research center. So we continuously pursue funding opportunities from private and government sponsors.
I think for us, one of the things that we run into is that we know there's all these projects going around. We just don't have the time, to be very honest, to put into seeking them out. So having the people seeking the funding or the sensor technology or the information, having that shared with the professional market would really help us advance the ability to help support those groups. I think that would be a really nice step forward.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for adding that.
Hey, Travis.
Hey, Andy.
Hey, I just wanted to pick up on following on from Chris and Chris. There's a huge amount of diverse knowledge and experience and understanding. And obviously, I am going to be completely naive to funding mechanisms in the US. Obviously, my US counterparts are probably much more on it. But in the same way that Chris Burns is talking about getting a better understanding of the technology that there is, and understanding the classification of autonomy and smart ports and everything else, is if we can kind of start pulling some of that knowledge in And picking up on what Chris Latta was just saying, if those who have knowledge of the funding mechanisms, be they commercial or be they kind of non-dilutive funding, government, federal, state funding opportunities. So in the UK government have got various stages of funding for different levels of technology readiness levels. So for TRL 1 to 4, the 1 to 5, you've got what's called the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. And then you've got levels 6, sort of 5, 6, 7. You've then got what's called the Zero Emission Vessels and Infrastructure Funding. And it's kind of like staged that there can be follow-on. So what are those funding mechanisms? What are the focuses? Is it all zero emissions, or is there different programs for developing technology products? If those that have the awareness of the funding mechanisms share what those are, what the focus is, and is there a call coming up in October, or is there a call coming up in January 24? If they could share that with the technology guys and industry can share back with Chris and all of those the right people, that we pool all of that knowledge in the middle, then you can identify what projects could be kicked off, start scoping who should be in these consortiums to best position the Smart Ships Coalition to have these projects lined up ready for the application deadlines and such like, and doing in a really informed way, doing in a timely fashion that you can visualize what a project is. You've got work packages, you know who would have what responsibility. So when that call comes up, you have the people who are experienced writing the applications being fueled by the knowledge of those that have the technology, and they'll kind of bring it all into the middle. I think that would be hugely valuable.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree. And I think that's, kind of thinking about the sustainability of this coalition, I think that's really the type of specific ideas and strategies that I was hoping to hear from some of you, and your interest in participating in that. Were there any other topics on this list that really resonated with any of the folks listening here?
Travis, I would reiterate on the workforce piece of it. That's one of the keys where I can be most successful in acquiring the funding, right? Is if it turns into economic opportunity for people and the businesses and the agencies that operate here, right? So and I appreciate Andy's comments, right? Because in the US, it typically boils down to where's this benefit going to advance and how are people going to take advantage of that. And so if we say we're creating jobs in the shipbuilding industry, then we have to tie into that the education and training for the people to be able to take those jobs. And so then that's where the tie-ins with a Michigan Tech or Great Lakes Boat Building School and so forth. And so that's why you have to have this sort of matrix of things. What is not just the development project or what's the opportunity to build this one boat, but all the other pieces that then make that successful. And so that's the reason why all the upfront planning needs to accelerate, because this funding's getting spent, right? We've already been through 1 year of the $1.7 trillion in funding that's out there available, and there are 2 more years, and we're behind because we don't even have our plans yet in place, right, of what it could be. And so we need to step up real quick of what are the things that we can make happen the soonest. That's going to be in the industries that we want to advance, and where those opportunities exist, because the funding's there. I know where it is. I know how to get it. And the main thing to getting it is to getting your act together, getting your plan together, having the right experts on the team, all of that stuff. And that's what I'm most excited about here, Travis. So I'm really excited. And again, even funding this organization, right, is a key part of that, right? Because that's who's pulling these folks together and pulling the resources together to even make it happen, let alone actually provide the education and training that's going to be needed in order for these projects to be successful. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit just so we can wrap this up. And again, you know, I hope that this is the start of a conversation, not the whole conversation. So looking at, you know, how do we translate these ideas into next steps? You know, I've spent a fair bit of time considering what is the leadership structure and how does this organization operate to make that happen. We talked a little bit about this at the fall workshop, but, you know, we haven't made a significant amount of progress of executing on bringing in, you know, additional levels of sort of this operating structure. So, you know, I view my role as largely as chairing this organization and, you know, bringing these folks together, and I'm very happy to continue doing this and seeing this grow. But as we're getting more and more participants involved, I think it's really important that we start to find folks from within that are engaged and interested in these topics that want to step up and lead in some of these respective areas. And, you know, potentially that's helping to organize the meetings or coordinate working groups, you know, taking on some of these funding opportunities, things of that sort. So I've identified a few types of roles or positions, and I want to get some feedback from all of you. So in no particular order, you know, I think there's certainly this administrative burden, which just comes down to kind of the secretariat, the communication, marketing, outreach, and PR. You know, I'm an engineer, so I can't say I'm great at any of those any one of those things. But if there are folks in this group that are and do that every day, I think there is a huge opportunity here for some of that type of support. In terms of discussing the policy and really advancing the ball on, you know, communicating between the technology developers and the policy makers, I think it's very important that we, you know, have a focal point for these conversations or focal contact from Smart Ships to these organizations, or maybe a few of these contacts that can relay a very concise message and you know, have these discussions. So I think, you know, I would call it a policy liaison, which kind of comes out of that policy working group. And I see that type of person just really coordinating all of the messaging coming from the coalition members and distilling that to the executive summary that can be relayed to, you know, our folks like Commander Strom and Captain Koss, who are on the line, as well as our international regulators. So again, throwing that out as an idea. Another topic, you know, another pillar is this workforce development piece. And really, there is certainly a need for this labor and workforce liaison. You know, in my day job, I don't particularly work with the mariners and the labor groups and those interests, although some of our large ship operators, for example, do. And I think there's a real important need to connect this organization and the people advancing and working on the technology solutions with the ship operators and with the mariners who are working on those ships to kind of get them involved in the process. So I see that as being a pretty important role going forward to this workforce development piece. Another one would be the international coordination of all of these various groups and initiatives that we've heard a little bit about in this meeting today. But, you know, having somebody who's very focused on keeping track of these projects and regulatory development and setting up a meeting of, you know, the leaders in each country that are advancing autonomy. I don't know that it is appropriate to bring everybody from Smart Ships to those discussions, but having maybe an appointed person or a couple people that can participate in those discussions and relay that back to Smart Ships, I see as a very valuable role. Another point would be the economic and business outlook, that strategist, that specialist, and he's seen, as several of you have mentioned this piece specifically, I sense there's a lot of interest in this, but I see this person as really just that, tracking the opportunities, looking at the funding, sharing the calls and the announcements, and helping to facilitate the teaming among Smart Ships Coalition members, which means that person needs to really be involved in Smart Ships as a group and understanding who else is involved, so that we have this sort of understanding of our collective capabilities and resources, and how we could form competitive teams around the funding opportunities that might be available. And then lastly, you know, I see sort of the testing and test bed as, you know, another outlet for basically making sure that we're not doing the same test in two different bubbles. You know, if somebody wants to test fuel efficiency optimizations through autonomy, for instance, it would make a lot of sense to run that idea through Smart Ships and find out who else is interested and where else that work might be done, and to try to get the maximum amount of benefit out of the projects being done by coordinating with the folks doing them. So again, not in a competitive manner, but in a cooperative manner. So I do see this as an area of opportunity, and, you know, with GLRC playing a role as the steward of the test bed, I think certainly, you know, some of the folks here are very interested in helping to coordinate this. So I'm going to stop there. And again, if any of you have thoughts or ideas on these types of roles, certainly seeking input or nominations or self-election.
Hey, Travis, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
And I don't want to, hopefully these are helpful to the discussion, but maybe I missed it. But is this group now that's here together, is this been formally formed as a steering committee? Or is that a step that needs to be taken? And then if and then I would suggest, you know, having more of a formal working agreement or that would establish some roles in subcommittee structure and chairs and co-chairs so that there's some clear authority and definition to those roles.
Yeah, so I would turn it back that I certainly could use a lot of help on somebody with that type of organizational experience. If there's a template or examples of that, I would love to, you know, work with somebody on that piece of this.
I'd be happy to help you with that. I sit on the Great Lakes section for SNAME. We can kind of give you our overall structure and we can kind of work off of that. It works pretty well for us.
Awesome. That'd be great, Chris. Thank you.
So just to pick up on Emily's point, like I said, we're all on this call because we're interested in that steering committee. Do we want to have some kind of, yes, we actually want to be part of it on the back of this call, and then start boiling it down and trying to just get an action out of Emily's point there and picking up on Chris's as well?
I think that would be appropriate. Yeah. If everybody else here is in agreement with that, expressing your interest or not being a part of the steering group would be a starting point.
And then I would just add to that, then if, I don't know if you want to have folks show their hands, I don't know why, but I can only see Howard's screen right now. So I'm playing around with my settings. But then to set up a follow-up meeting to actually do some information gathering on how to structure, have some different models for structuring, and then have a discussion with that steering committee group to work through, you know, formal and informal structures and codes of conduct, you know, decision-making rules, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. If everybody can find the raised hand on the Zoom, I guess at the very least, we could start with the raised hand if you're interested in being part of this. And I'm happy to set up another time where we could dive into this structure side of this a little bit. And leaning on those of you who have been a part of these other types of organizations to help inform that.
Just as a caveat to my hand, Travis, I think there'll be one of my US counterparts will be the more appropriate kind of day-to-day point contact for us, but I'd certainly be interested in maintaining my kind of involvement, but I'm going to raise my hand that one of my US counterparts would take the lead for OI, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. Nominations are great.
And Travis, I'm raising my hand. I think it would be great for state partners to be part of the initial steering committee discussions as it's envisioning how it's formed. And then we should have some further discussion about, you know, what the state's role is. Are we ex officio or are we official members? And there can be time for that discussion to happen later.
Absolutely.
I just want to help this group stand itself up in a way that it can move forward and be supportive and successful.
So I do see some folks who haven't raised their hand. if anybody is not interested, I certainly appreciate that, but you're welcome to share your input going forward. I think as a next step, based on what I'm hearing, I'll set up a time to kind of dive into an organizational structure, and I'm going to coordinate with those of you who are raising your hands on maybe putting forth some templates or ideas ahead of that meeting that we might present, and we can certainly open up to the rest of the group and let everybody know we're having a meeting, and if they are interested in serving on a steering committee in an official capacity to join. So I won't limit it to just those of us who stuck on this call, but I'll make sure everybody is aware of that, that we're formalizing this group. And I guess the last point then would be to sort of establish a meeting time frame for that discussion. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, I would propose maybe we look at sometime in the coming month and a half to 2 months. So maybe May or early June.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great. So I'll start to pick some dates out or set out a poll, and once we have a date established for the next steering group, I will share information to all of you about that and solicit ideas on what type of structures or draft we might come to on that. And when we convene that meeting, we can present that to others that might join us at that time. Awesome. Well, it's 11:30. It's been a long meeting. I really appreciate everybody's enthusiasm for these topics, and I hope that we continue to work together to really move the needle forward for all of our organizations.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks, Travis. See everybody.
Thanks, Travis. Have a great